Okay. So my name is Michelle Ragusa McBain, and I'm very excited to talk to you about a subject that I'm very passionate about, which is diversity. And it's not just a buzzword. It is something that is really amazing and going to create extremely wonderful, tangible and intangible results, profitable results, and a better culture for your company, for your team, and for your clients. Now, everybody has a phone, right? Okay, take it out. I'm the person that doesn't say put it away. I want you to have it. I want you to use it. I want you to @ me on Twitter or use the hashtag ITNation19 if there's something that you're really passionate about and you want to hear. I want to fill this Twitter feed with really positive quotes on diversity and equality in our groups. Now, there's also something really fun. The number one thing I want you to get out of today is educational. The second is I want you to network with each other. So if you have the LinkedIn app, if you click on this little person, you can feel free to do it now real time. Click on that little person, add the plus symbol, and then click on Find Nearby and turn it on. Allow that with the simple OK, and you should be able to connect to anybody in the room here today. So if you like that, feel free to use that moving forward. A great tip at conferences. You don't have to, if you forget your business cards in the room, you can always leverage that as well. So it is time for us to use our imaginations. I'm going to ask everyone to please close your eyes. I know it sounds weird. Just do it. Okay, imagine you're on your way to the hottest IT tech conference of the year, and you're about to catch your plane, but you don't have your TSA pre-check, and you're in a giant long security line, and your plane just got changed to a different terminal, and you're running through the terminal, and you're trying to figure out where you need to go. And you finally get there, and the doors are closing, and you scream out, "Wait!" And you get on the plane. And the pilot gets out and said, "Welcome aboard. I hope you have a pleasant day." And you sit down, and you're relaxed, and you get on your flight, and you made it just in the nick of time. Now you're on that flight, and you're going to where you need to be, and you land, and you're starving because you didn't have time to catch a quick bite to eat. So you're sitting at dinner, and there's a beautiful couple next to you celebrating their anniversary. They've been together 25 years, and you're just looking at them with joy and happiness. And you go to sleep, and you get a good night's rest, and you wake up in the morning, and you wake up, and you go to that tech conference, and you see the hottest CEO of all time, the top tech CEO. Now open your eyes. How many of you imagine that that pilot was a black man? How many of you imagine that couple celebrating their 25th anniversary were two men? How many of you thought that that top tech CEO was a woman? This just happens to be mine, Janet Shine's JS Group. The brain takes in 11 million pieces of data, but can only handle 40 at a time. So typically, it's made to make quick decisions. And those decisions are typically based on your past experiences. The issue with that is, the less that we're exposed to, the more likely we are not to think of things that are outside of the norm. Not because we don't like them, or not because we don't believe in them, or think they're equitable and fair, but just because we're not used to it. So I'm going to call that a blind spot. And the issue is, each of us has blind spots that we take in that we don't consider when we're going through our daily lives. And those things form to create unconscious bias. So I'm going to ask the question, what does diversity mean to you? Give me some answers. Throw them out. Better decisions. People who think differently. Awareness. Intersectionality. Wonderful. Okay, great. So this one, in honor of Halloween, kind of made me giggle, right? So you look there, and you have a whole bunch of people and the pirate at the end, and you see at the inside, we're all kind of the same, right? There's not a lot of differences between each of us. But the truth is that there are. We have different fingerprints. We have different DNA. We have different eye patterns. But we also all live unique, different experiences in our lives. So who am I? I'll just tell you a bit about myself and my experiences, and then we'll kick it off. My name is Michelle, as I mentioned. I'm the VP of Global Channel Strategy at JS Group, a consulting group for the channel. I am also Chairman Emeritus of CompTIA's Advancing Women in Technology. I sat on the board of Women in the Channel for CRN. I am a founder of Tech World's Half. I'm one of the SMB 150, and I was ranked by Entrepreneur magazine as one of the 4 women to encourage young women and girls to pursue a career in technology. That sounds really exciting, but I'm just me. I'm like all of you. And the truth is, I love diversity. That's my husband, actually in the front, Jay McBain, also a member of the channel. And we have traveled to 92 countries and 6 continents around the world, 50 of those with our 5-year-old and 3-year-old. We have a lot of fun exploring cultures and language and food and music. These are our girls, and thank you. And my challenge every day is when I look at them is to say, how do I create a culture that allows these young ladies to grow up and want to pursue a career in tech, right? And I'm a trifer, okay? I am a woman. I'm a millennial, shennial, last year of analog, first year of digital, so that was fun. And I'm also a child of immigrants and the first in my family to go to college from a lower socioeconomic background. So for me, it is critical that I encourage these girls and a lot of different people that don't look like us to pursue a career in tech. So I've given a lot of speeches to colleges and high schools and junior high schools and elementary schools, but I recently faced my toughest critics, preschoolers. They're tough. And I had to go against the ultimate challengers, the doctor and the fireman. Okay, if they brought that fire truck, game over, right? We all know that. However, I decided that I wanted to make tech the coolest thing in that room, and I will not be defeated. So what I did is I brought in all the things that are tech-based that I thought would be really cool for children. I brought in iPads, and I brought in Alexa. I brought new lighting. I brought my friend with her Tesla, and we made those doors open to the Christmas song, and it was epic. But then what I did is I asked every person in that room, the doctor, the fireman, the dentist, how do you use technology in your roles? And they gave a long laundry list of how technology is in every single career that we do and what we experience. And every single child in that preschool walked out that day saying, I'm gonna work in tech. Now that's my goal. So by a show of hands, how many people in this room said, you know, when I grow up, I wanna have a career in tech? We have 3. That's exciting, actually. Good for you. You knew your life path. That wasn't me. This is me. The early years. Hashtag my poor mother. Look at my face. I did not shut up. That hasn't changed. I'm sorry also to my husband. This is the thing. I was a child of a second-generation Americans. My family, 3 out of 4 immigrated to this country. One of them was Native American. In my family, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. There are more languages spoken in Brooklyn than anywhere else in the world. My family is sort of the Brady Bunch there. There's 3 boys, 3 girls, but they didn't have the easiest life. My grandmother got sick. My grandfather, rather than being able to take care of him working a full-time job, he actually put them in an orphanage. And so my family grew up sort of through the school of hard knocks. They came back together around this age, and my grandmother took them and raised them, and they finished their completion, but nobody pursued what they should do with their lives. That wasn't a focus. They were just surviving, right? So in terms of education, in terms of academia, they went to trade schools. So this is me, and I am the first in my family to graduate from college. I am the first to get an MBA, and this is my one of my favorite quotes, but it was from a Harvard professor named Anthony Jack, and it says, "Access ain't inclusion." And that is true in academia, and that is true in companies around the world. Just because you get your foot in the door and you count somebody in an entry-level position does not mean that you help them grow the ranks and see them in levels of leadership. The truth is companies are more successful and profitable if you have all people and all diverse thoughts at the table. But we're not there yet, and we'll give you some stats on that. So one of the things I noticed is that everybody I met in college was a child of somebody who is very successful. So if their parents were doctors, they wanted to be a doctor. If their parents were lawyers, they wanted to be a lawyer. Well, this is what my family looked like. They were hairstylists. There were union construction workers. And that led me to say, what do I want to do with my life, right? And so what we talked about earlier is luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. So for me, I graduated. I said, I want to make a lot of money. So I worked on Wall Street. I hated it. I didn't love it. I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. So I ended up going on to pursue an alumni event that I was invited to. And everybody in that room only wanted to network with each other. And the problem there is that when you have senior, experienced people, that you don't put your hand down to help somebody coming up, that you don't bring that diversity. So I encourage everyone here today, if you're just starting out, find somebody senior in the room. If you are senior in the room, find somebody just starting out. Work together to encourage that mentoring, reverse mentoring relationships, because it's critical to the survival and growth of each and every person in this room. So this person came up to me. He asked me if I knew what a router was. I said, I don't know, but if you teach me, I'll learn. That man ended up being the global VP of Cisco Systems and told me about a program that they had, which was the ASR or ASE, so Global Academy of Sales and Engineering. It was in North Carolina. It was a year long, and you had to go through a very grueling process to get into it. So for every spot, there were only 800 seats available. So I went through the interview process, and it was like speed dating. You're at a table, and people are talking, and then ding, you have to switch, and it's very nerve-wracking. And I got through the first one great, and the second one went awesome, and the third guy looked at my resume, and he said this, I don't think you're cut out for this. And I said, excuse me, I think you're wrong. Now, if you looked at my resume, what you would have seen is I had straight A's. I was great. I was a joiner. I did every club and activity you could imagine. But my work experience included waitressing, a fry-later at McDonald's, and blowing up bumpers in a bowling alley. It wasn't that great. But my mom was a single mom. She raised me by herself, and I had to work through school. So while I had a presidential scholarship and a grant, I also had to work my way, and I didn't have the opportunity for an internship. So I looked at him and I said, I think you're wrong. Can we go on with our interview? He said, okay, let's proceed. We went through the whole interview, and at the end, I said, do you think I'm a good candidate for this job now? He said, absolutely. I knew you were when you told me I was wrong. So fast forward, I spent 13 years of my life at Cisco. It was one of the best companies I've ever worked for, and it was a fantastic start to my career. However, at my first global sales meeting, I noticed something that was very odd. I went to the bathroom, and on my way to the line, there was nobody in front of me. I went in, I came out, I washed my hands, and I saw this long line of what I thought was the bar. And it turned out that was the lines for the men's room. And at first I thought, this is awesome. And then I thought, I hope someday that changes. I hope someday that the lines are equal. Because I think that even in amazing big companies that promote inclusion and diversity, we still don't see it, right? So there's a disconnect. So let's talk about the pink elephant in the room. This is a boardroom picture from the 1930s. Not a lot has changed. Well, maybe some things have changed, but by most part, that picture still looks pretty much the same. There is a statistic that says there are more men named John leading major companies in the world than women leading companies in the world. Only 11% of executive positions at Silicon Valley are held by women, and of those, 5% are in leadership. Only 25% of computer jobs are held by women, and that has been on a steady decline for the last 13 years. The turnover rate for women compared to men is twice as high in the tech industry as the private sector. Twice as high. And of those middle-aged women, 56% of women drop out mid-career. These are the reasons. Some leave for a non-technical job, some leave to become self-employed, some leave to become a stay-at-home mother, some leave to do a startup. But they're leaving, right? So how do you not only attract women to your companies, but retain them, promote them, grow them? Also, 88% of all IT patents were by male-only invention teams. 2% were female, 2%. 12% of engineers at Silicon Valley startups are women. 7% of partners at top 100 venture capital firms, and that growth is delayed. And more than 30% of women over the age of 35 are still in junior positions. In fact, that's true regardless of age. This is some statistics of some of the top tech companies. And as you can see, women are vastly unrepresented. But the truth is, this is not just a woman issue. Diversity, to me, is many things. It's race, gender, culture, language, socioeconomic background, introverts, extroverts. There's so many components that are at play of what determines who we are and what we do and how we become and thrive and survive. This is the statistic of the close the gap of women compared to men. If you look at this, a white man makes $1, a white woman makes 70 cents to that dollar, 77 cents. An African woman makes 64 cents on the dollar, and a Hispanic woman makes 56 cents on the dollar. The time that it would take for us to close that gap is 95 years. That's staggering. And we need to do something about it, and we need to expedite that process. Now, if you look at other diversity issues, you would see that half as many African American and Hispanics are in tech. 83% of tech executives are white. And if you think, maybe it's different at big companies, it's not. More than 50% of employees at Apple and Google are still Caucasian. Here's a racial diversity breakdown of all of the top companies, white, Asian, and everybody else in the minor sectors there. And those are also true for female. So the overwhelming majority of these problems is that we're just not getting the right people in the room. Now, despite countless initiatives to increase diversity, the industry thinks it's still not working. And that's true also for sexual orientation as the overwhelming majority. The issue with this is that the unfair treatment of employees creates a $16 billion a year replacement cost to train, recruit, onboard, and get them up and running to where you need them to be because you lost somebody that wasn't happy. There's also another interesting and unfortunate thing that happens, and they call it tokenism. What happens in tokenism is you hire you hire an employee based upon their background personally versus their professional experience. I always say this: I don't want to be hired because I'm a woman or a minority or a millennial, but I don't want to not be hired because of it as well. Hire me because I can do the job better than anyone else, and I can. Diversity fatigue is what happens when companies try to fix this problem but feel like they're in paralysis dialysis. It's just, what can we do? Big Fortune 50 companies have this problem. Small startups have this problem. It is not exclusive or independent to any one group. And so there's a huge catalyst to figure out how to fix this. And the most important criteria here is the world is changing and companies need to evolve or they will go extinct. And this is not just a past problem, this is also a future problem. My former CEO, John Chambers, and Cisco, we all know, is an internet networking company. This quote blew me away. John said, AI will be a bigger impact on the world than the internet was. AI will be a bigger impact on the world than the internet was. So that forces us to examine the problems with AI's diversity issues as well. How many of you realize how many things in your life or the decisions about you are being made by artificial intelligence every single day? For example, how many decisions do you think are made on your gender, your race, your background, your age? For example, what if the AI device is saying that a person named John is more qualified to be a programmer than a person named Mary? What if they're saying that a white person is more likely to pay off their loan than a black or Hispanic person is? What if they're saying that the biases that we have in our human life or history or mistakes are going to be recreated and put into the machine learning that is going to happen to predict our futures? That is a big problem. And the problem is that AI is now determining what job interview you get, how much you're going to pay for car insurance, what your credit score rating is, and the grade that you're going to get on your performance review. So the decisions that are being filtered by these biases are extremely important and can be life-changing for every person in this room. How many people in the room, by show of hands, use Siri, Alexa, or Cortana? Okay, everyone. So did you ever think about the fact that Siri, Alexa, and Cortana are all female, obedient servants? Alexa, turn on my lights. Alexa, tell me what my schedule is. While the male counterparts, IBM's Watson, Einstein, the robot lawyer, they're all doing more critical professional roles than administrative roles. We have to be very careful to avoid sexism in all areas of our life. And technology is being created for widely varying and diverse population is being formed by a very homogeneous, distinct group of white, middle-aged men. We need to change that. It's not ideal, and it's not ideal because beware of our own biases, both in our roles, in our conscience, on our teams, in our companies, in our technology. But these machines are making decisions all around us every single day. We have to ensure that the diverse teams are everywhere we are, including building this technology, and we have to give it diverse experiences to learn from. Now, the most important thing I want to say is that's the dark side, okay? We're going to move to the light side, and there's a lot of positives, right? Because it's not just a feel-good, I feel good that I have diversity, because you will, but it's also profitable, and it gives you better results. So inclusion and diversity is the right thing to do and has many tangible and intangible results. Firstly, 80% of people surveyed say they believe that diversity and inclusion is important. Does everyone in this room feel it's important? Show of hands. If it wasn't, I don't think you'd show up here today, right? So I think that's important. I would like to see these seats filled because I think it's so important that everyone in this conference knows how important diversity and inclusion is. So please tell a friend. The second part is that diversity efforts could net the IT industry an extra $400 billion a year in revenue, according to Todd Thibodeau, the CEO of CompTIA. It's also true that most financially gender-diverse companies perform 15% better on average, while ethically diverse companies perform better 34% on average. There's also those intangible results, such as having a woman on the team with a higher EQ can really make the nonverbal cues, empathy, and the collaboration of a team that much stronger and beneficial. Diversity is also seen at the management level, and the most ethnically diverse executive teams perform 20% better than their non-diverse counterparts. This effect is noticeable because when you see one or more women on the board, you get a 4% higher return on your investments. And right now, the US economy is booming, but companies are still saying they have skill shortages 40% of the time. So I would encourage you to say that if you're looking for your employees where everyone else is looking, look somewhere else. There are very diverse areas that we can talk about, such as community colleges, such as minority associations, different places that you conventionally go to look for your clientele and your employees that you're not looking at today. So what about women diverse-owned startups? I couldn't even list on one page how many amazing statistics there were for these. They perform 35% higher ROI. They are 63% outperforming male-founded startups. They deliver higher revenue, 2 times that of males. They have 10% more cumulative revenue over a 5-year period. They also have grown 58% and 46% in terms of revenue, and you can even break that down by African American women-owned startups growing 164% since 2007, and Latina women-owned businesses being the #1 growth of startups with 87%. Also, there's a statistical correlation that says that you have 22% less turnover with a woman-owned business. The question is, why is it only 2.2% of venture capitalists are investing in women-owned with those results? There's a miss, right? There's a miss. So here's what I'm going to say. Birds of a feather flock together. People like people that are like them. You feel comfortable. Stop that. Find somebody different than you, professionally, personally. Learn about them. Grow with them. Mentor, reverse mentor. Encourage each other to do more together. We all know it's time for change, but what can we do, right? I think you're here to figure that out. And I don't think it's this. I don't think you need a culturally diverse picture on a website of everybody in every nationality, like United Color of Benetton, from an 80-year-old to a 10-year-old, and you check the box. Done. We're diverse. Good. Gotta go. That's not it. Diversity is more than that, and it's a top-down, bottom-up initiative. So here's some people that I know personally or have researched or talked with that I think are really doing it right. Anne Wojcicki of 23andMe, her VP of People said that here, compared to other places he's been, diversity is not an initiative. It's embedded in our culture, and it's driven down by Anne. Rokia Jones, who's one of the co-founders of the Advancing Women Tech World's Half group on Facebook, she works at Microsoft, and she said, when I think a diverse culture of an environment that supports unity, collaboration, acceptance, that allows us to all freely share our thoughts, right? You want to feel comfortable. It has to be a safe space. Janet Shines, my CEO, it's dangerous when people all think the same and feel the same and have the same points of view. It's our differences which make us good for innovation, culture, and expanding our points of view. Wendy Barr, who is our former channel chief at Cisco and a mentor for me for many years, I had a podcast interview with her, and this is what she said to me. When you lead a team that comes from different backgrounds and different experiences and different cultures, your outcome is so great, and what you deliver is robust, proven statistically, but also it feels great to be heard for your authentic self. Right? I think a lot of us have this imposter syndrome, and we don't believe in ourselves enough, or we feel we have to be something that we're not. And the ability for us to really be authentically who we are at the workplace is so important and critical for a company's success. Vic Verma had this wonderful thing to say. He runs 8x8, and this was a comment that he came out. He had this presentation, and he talked about, how can you tell me about a Silicon Valley startups? And he said this. It doesn't matter what the race, gender, religion, what God they worship. It just comes down to what's in people's heads and what's in people's hearts. And you find the smart people, and you get them the good values, and you have them understand what your company wants to do, and you set them loose, right? That's it. It's not that complicated. Tiffany Bova of Salesforce said in a podcast interview I had with her, it's not about gender. She said, I don't think of myself as a woman in tech. I think of myself in tech. But I also think diversity is more than a woman and man conversation. It's about gender, culture, language, age, leadership, experience. How many of your companies touch anything globally? Okay, yeah, so several people in this room. And I think that that's the important thing, right? If you think about country to country or culture to culture, there are unique differences, right? That you would see even state to state than you would ordinarily. And so noticing what those differences are, accepting them, and understanding them is what's going to help you benefit. Heather Tenuto said, you look across the table, and if everyone looks and thinks like you, you've failed. And John Chambers said this, we can no longer pretend that bias doesn't exist, nor can we talk around them. The result of creating a more equal environment will not just be better performance for all our organizations, but create greater happiness for all. So here's a fun story. In the 1970s, symphony orchestras were all white men. But they started doing something about it. They created blind screen auditions, which increased the people that they hired to be 46% women. So what are the roots of unconscious bias? And this was sort of an interesting story that I heard. A woman was referred who had an amazing resume. She was the perfect candidate. But when the HR recruiter came, and they asked her, what did you think about the candidate? Her paper was in the garbage. And she said, I don't understand. She had all the criteria, she had the best skill set, she fit the model to the T. And she said, but did you notice her shoes? I'm sorry, what? Did you notice her shoes? She's wearing white after Labor Day. I mean, you don't do that. Whew. Would you ever notice a man's shoes? Does anyone notice a man's shoes? This is the thing, right? And it's shameful, but that's a true story. And the problem is that there are different standards between different people, and that has to change. And so the average recruiter takes 6 seconds to look and analyze a resume. 6 seconds. It's 30 times longer to make popcorn. So how much investment are you really giving into that, right? How much are you really learning? If I was going to ask you who you were going to recruit from for your companies or your teams, you have Harvard, you have Indiana University. Who would say Harvard? Show of hands. If you said Harvard, you just denied Mark Cuban, the multimillionaire investor, businessman, and shark. If I was going to ask you if you would choose this clean-cut young man on the left or this man with the full-sleeve tattoos on the right, or just any tattoos, how many of you would choose the one with no tattoos? If you did, you just denied Teddy Roosevelt and Thomas Edison. They also had tattoos. If you had to choose between the girl with the proper hair or the ones with the crazy hair, I'll use air quotes because I actually like the rainbow hair. You could have just denied Albert Einstein. Not everyone looks the same. If you had to choose between the brunette or the blonde, and you think that the brunettes are smarter, you could have just denied Marissa Mayer, the founder of Lumi Labs and former CEO of Yahoo. And if you're hiring a programmer role and you have Chang versus Bill, and you think, you know what, Asians are usually better at programming, then you probably just denied Bill Gates. So the issue is that whether we think about it or not, we do have bias or unconscious bias. And the thing is, you all have it, whether you think about it or not. So there's this quote by Deepak Chopra which says, our ideal body weight is inside us, waiting to be chiseled out of the marble, just like David was. The issue is that I don't think that it's just that. It's not about your weight. It's about who you really want to be. We all want to be good people. We want to be inclusive people. We want to be diverse and welcoming, equal people, or you wouldn't be here today. But how do you get that gut instinct, that adrenal gland, that fight or flight, immediate unconscious bias out of your head? How do you do that? So for example, if you're hiring a candidate and you think, oh, they have a long commute to work, so they're probably going to be late to work every day, I'm going to turn them down. Or if you're hiring a candidate and you start Googling them on social media and you see they have some drunk Facebook post, at least one. You say, you know what, I don't want that guy in my office. I saw him at the IT Nation Halloween party. He didn't look that good. Or you get a resume and the guy says he's been unemployed for 6 months. And I say guy equally because I'm a New Yorker, guy, gal, you know? And you say, you know what, he's probably lazy. He's probably unemployed watching Jerry Springer at home. I want you to say something instead. I want you to say 2 words. So what? Can you all say it with me? So what? I want you to pause, self-check, and remove any emotional clutter that might be going in your mind and the backstory of why that person is the way they are or did what they did, right? Just remove that for a second. And then say, what if that person has the longest commute but is looking for a job and is so happy that he's the first person that shows up to work every day? Should I deny him the opportunity to prove himself before he does? Or what if that one drunk picture on Facebook turns out to be just a funny night that he got tagged in, but he actually is the most incredible and hardworking, innovative employee you're ever going to have? Or what if that person had a really good reason to be out of work for 6 months? And you just don't know. You don't know their backstory. You don't know what's in their head or their heart or their background, and you should not judge because we all have backstories and we all have experiences that we don't know about. So the point of this is that you have to give everyone a seat at the table. and you have to listen to them. And that's not just true for the things you can see physically, how old I am, what nationality you think I am, what age I look to be, but also the things you can't see, right? Like maybe they're from a different socioeconomic background. Maybe they came from a different country. Maybe they speak multiple languages, and it's a hard thing to do, and they've learned and educated themselves along the way. Maybe they're introverted, but they have great ideas, but the extroverts take over the conversation, and you don't have the opportunity to give them a platform to speak. So the critical component is, if you're a manager or somebody leading that team meeting, I want you to call out the people that aren't speaking and ask them, what do you think about this? Do you think there's something that we could be doing better, different? Do you think that there's something you can add? And I'm not saying put people on the spot, but sometimes you need to put people on the spot because they won't just do it on their own. And it's a really critical thing to allow everybody to feel comfortable and open. The other thing I'm going to talk about is mentoring, reverse mentoring sponsors and champions. You have to be one, you have to seek one, okay? Everybody. Does everyone in the room have a mentor? Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4. God bless you. So here's the deal, okay? I spent a lot of years of my life thinking, okay, if I work really, really hard and I do a really great job, they're going to see me and they're going to think it's amazing and they're going to promote me and I will be this, right? Do we all kind of feel that way sometimes? The truth is that doesn't happen. There are conversations going in a boardroom 6 months before that job opens up. And they're saying, you know what? Who do we want for this role that we're going to be creating in 6 months from now? You know what? I think it's Amanda. I think it's Jack. Why? Because it's not about who you know, it's about who knows you. And the point of that conversation is that you have to really have a very good relationship with the people advocating your success. A mentor is somebody who's going to tell you what to do. They're going to tell you what they've done. They're going to give you some guiding feedback. You may talk to them rarely, but they're not going to go to bat for you. A sponsor or a champion is somebody that's going to be sitting in that room that has the ability to put weight into your role. And that they're going to say, that person should not be missed. And I can't tell you as a consultant how many times I sit in that room right now and hear who is going to be selected for a role before it's even posted to the HR site. The problem with that is if you're not known and your name's not there and you haven't had those conversations, guess what? It's not you. And you want to be, right? You want to grow in your careers. You want to get broader and enrich your development. And in order to do that, you need somebody who knows you and is going to tell you honestly. And we talked about this in our Advancing Women in Tech panel earlier today. A lot of times people are described as something too bubbly, too aggressive, too sensitive, you name it. The problem with that is that it's not about your interior qualities. It's about reading the room appropriately, right? Knowing when to speak up and when not to. Knowing when it's a good time to make that joke and when it's not to. Knowing when to be your authentic self and when to just take it down a notch, right? And I think that you should always be your authentic self, but there's levels of that, right? And so the important thing for each of you in this room when you come out of this room is to say, who are my mentors? And I said this morning, I'm very greedy. I want all the mentors. I don't want one. I want 100. I want to find somebody who inspires me. I want to learn from them. And I think everybody has a quality that is wonderful. And you can learn a little bit of something from everybody that you interact with. The other component of that that's really critical is that some people think, what can you do for me? But they don't think, what can I do for you? And the truth is, we all have very unique qualities that allow us to be very successful in our roles of who we are, what brought us to where we are, and it's critical for us to share them. So I'll give you an example. It's kind of a funny story, but about 10 years ago, I was at an event. It was a CompTIA event, and my mentor, who I didn't even know from Adam, was on stage, and she was talking about advancing women in technology. And I had my phone, and typically what I would do in an event is I would take notes. And I would take those notes and I would write them down, and then I would share them with myself. But I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to tweet these notes. And so I started tweeting at her and the event, and I shared them. Other people retweeted it. It grew my network. And she noticed. She took notice of me. And in the bathroom, I was standing in line. There was a line, good news. And I was about to wash my hands, and she looked down at my badge, and she said, "You're the one that's been tweeting at me." And I said, "It is me. How great to meet you in person." This is really awkward in the bathroom, but that's fine. And so we had a great conversation, and it wasn't that day. I didn't ask her to be my mentor that day in some awkward fashion, but we built a relationship over time. And over the next 10 years, I saw her, I mentored with her, I called her for help, I asked her for guidance, and she guided me on a path. And today, I work for her. And the thing is, at the end of the day, you never know who the person you meet is going to help you on your career. And I always say, be kind on the way up, because you never know who you'll meet on the way down. So the important part is that you're going to meet a lot of different people in your career. And I want you guys to be honest, authentic, genuine, kind, pay it forward every single day, because you never know the impact that will have in reverse. The other thing I want you to do is network, network, network. Not just at this event, not just within your company, outside your company, outside your comfort zone. If you're not a part of other communities, maybe you should be. CompTIA has many communities that you could participate in. There are other events. Jay mentioned there's 25 other communities that exist today. What are your interests? What are your passions? What are the things that you want to do 10 years from now? And who do you need to know to be a part of it? What does that ecosystem look like? What are the community influencers look like? How can you participate, learn, engage, and educate yourself every single day? You can always learn something new, and you should be pursuing that constantly. And the ability for you to network is going to help expand your thoughts and your horizons and encourage you to be the best person you can be, both at work, professionally, and personally. And finally, I want to say just one thing. This is an example that I love, okay? These are geese. We've all seen them, right? They fly in that V formation. Do you know why they fly like that?
So that the one in the front can take most of the wind, the other ones in the back can rest, and then they trade turns.
Great. So there's two reasons, and you hit the nail on the head. The first reason is this. They fly with the one in the front. As they flap their wings, it helps elevate each one's behind them. So they help take some of the burden off their flight. The ones in the back honk. And the reason they honk is they're cheering and encouraging the one in front of them on. So the interesting thing about geese is that they're constantly helping one another. And when they get tired, or if they get sick, if he gets sick, Chu would fly down to land with them. They would nurse them till they get back to health, or they would wait till they pass before they leave them. So the point of geese is no geese left behind. And my ask of everyone in this room and everyone listening to this message is be a geese, be a goose. Encourage each other, lift each other up, cheer each other on, learn from each other, support each other, and acknowledge that we are all different, but together we are stronger. And finally, yes, and my husband's Canadian. He says, Canadian geese are very nice. They are. So here's Yoda, the immortal philosopher. There is no try. Try not. Do or do not. There is no try. So each of you, it's not an easy battle. Nobody has gotten it perfect. And it doesn't start with an HR recruiter. And it doesn't start with, some company and you say, what can I do? Hey, Google and Apple haven't done it perfectly. How can I do it perfectly? The truth is, every single person has the ability. And if every single person learns and works to make companies more culturally, ethnically, gender, age, sexual orientation, what have you, more diverse places to work and live and coexist, then together we're going to grow and learn and be stronger. And you can't just wait for somebody else to do it. If you're hiring for your team, be conscious of those changes. Be conscious of that unconscious bias, that gut decision that wants to tell you, don't hire that person because I don't know what they are or what they're not, but what I do know is that I want to give people a chance. I want to learn, and I want to see if they are the best candidate for the role. And I think that, at the end of the day, is what's going to make us the best that we can be. Do we have any questions?
So one of the numbers that really intrigued me, you had a lot of fascinating, but one that really intrigued me is, if I remember correctly, something like 25% of women are in tech, but the number is dropping.
Correct.
And what I really would love insight on is, why is it dropping? And the reason I ask is, I think if we understand why it's dropping, maybe we can do something about it. But do you know why it's dropping?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And there's a lot of surveys. CompTIA has done a lot of research. I'm going to repeat the question so everyone who's listening can hear it. The question was, there was research that said that 25% of women are dropping out of computer programming. It's actually 56% of women overall are dropping out mid-career. What is the reason for that and why? And there's been a lot of research. I used to be chairman emeritus of CompTIA, and our goal was to reach 10,000 women and girls and understand that. We accomplished that goal of meeting those girls in the US, and then we expanded it to London and Canada and Australia, New Zealand, and we were very proficient and precise about understanding not only how to attract them, but how to retain them. So there was a lot of surveys and research that went into that. The critical reasons are a multitude of reasons, really. The number one reason that people leave their jobs is their boss. The number one reason that they leave a role is because of who they work for. They could love the company, they could love the culture, but if they don't like the boss, they're out. The problem with that is that it's very hard to, unless you have a top-down, bottom-up culture that supports advancing people and supports the openness to tackle situations such as the queen bee syndrome that we talked about earlier, where women are typically more critical of other females in the organization. There's not just a male issue. There are different components that impact this, right? And there's also another interesting statistic that said 60% of male managers, felt uncomfortable working with women. 60%. The reason for that was a multitude of reasons. One was the Me Too movement had them scared that they would be accused of sexual harassment. Another was they were worried what their wife or girlfriend would think. Another was that they were worried about the corporate politics and people chatting at the water cooler. Another was they just kind of felt like hanging with the guys because they were more, interested in being with people that are like them. The problem with that is when you have most of the people in position of power are male, and they are not mentoring or championing the women below them, then you're not going to get advancement, right? I was in a meeting the other day, and there was a gentleman who's a channel chief that shall remain nameless, and he was sitting with two other gentlemen. And before I go to any meeting, I look them up on LinkedIn, and I see what their previous roles were, and I discovered something really funny. What I discovered is that they not only worked at this company together, they worked at their previous company together, and they worked at the company before that together. Why? Well, people buy from people they like, people work with people they like, and people follow people they like. I probably would have never left Cisco, except that I love it there. It's a great company, but I followed a mentor. And the problem is that when you're following a mentor, but your mentors aren't women or people that don't look like you, then you're not taking them with you, right, up the ranks. So as positions of power, how many people have seen somebody, a CEO or some other C-level executive, leave a company and their whole E-level staff leaves with them, right? It could be a startup too. You have a company, they leave, and a whole bunch of new people come in with that new person because you have your network and you have your relationships and you have your connections. So the biggest reasons that I've seen is that you're not getting the advocacy and support, you're not getting the mentorship, you're not getting the champions, and for women, there is that thing in the back of their head, and this was a funny story that Sheryl Sandberg said in her Lean In book. She said that a woman came in her office and she said, I can't take the job. I can't take the job because I love what I do and I'm passionate about it, but I'm gonna have kids and I'm gonna have this and I'm not gonna have the time. And Sheryl said, oh my gosh, I didn't even know you were engaged. Congratulations, when are you due? And she said, I'm not married, I don't have kids yet, but I will, and I won't have the time for that. She excluded herself before she even had a guy she was dating. She took herself out of the market. And the problem with that is that there's this thought that you can't do it all, that you can't be the perfect wife and mother and all of these things. But the truth is, work-life balance isn't a woman issue. It's a human issue. I was at the mental awareness meeting yesterday, mental health awareness, and it was fantastic because they talked about how everybody doesn't really talk about taboo issues, this being one of them. Diversity, women, things that are different than we're used to societally talking about. And the issue is if you don't talk about it, nothing will change. If you don't address it, if you don't feel comfortable, if you don't communicate and say, you know what, I laugh about it, have fun with it, bring people together. But the issue that we have is that we hold these things back and we don't encourage people to grow and say, you know what, you don't have to be perfect, no one is. And that man, he might also need to get his kids after school, and that's okay. And the point is that we are all human beings and that we have to have work-life balance, and we have to be creating a society that allows us to be all of those things. And if women feel that they are supported and advocated and that's not a threat to their employment, I think that that will also help attract and retain them. You had a question over there? You did, okay.
So my question revolves a little bit more, how can we, what tips and advice can you give on how to promote diversity in the workplace and how to avoid conflict with employees?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So in the workplace, I think it's very important to talk about things. And it really depends on the size of your company, but it doesn't, okay? I worked at a Fortune 500 company, and I've worked at a 10-person startup, and there's a big chasm in between there, but the truth is culture, okay? And everybody wants to feel listened to and heard and understood, regardless of the size of your company. And if you can create groups, oftentimes affinity groups, that allow you to talk or communicate or be open or share about who you are and what you do, many of the previous companies I worked with had those. And they're a wonderful way to bring people together of like minds, but different minds. So running the Advancing Women panel for many years and many different capacities, I often have men that come to me and say, oh, sorry, I can't come to that one, but I'll come to your diversity talk. And I say, why? Why wouldn't you be able to come to the women one? Because the truth is, if you don't have men in the room, you're not gonna learn from it, right? You're not gonna change anything. We need championings, we need understanding, we need advocacy. It needs to be an open conversation. It's not just one group venting, it's everybody coming together and understanding. So if you have an Asian affinity network and I'm not Asian, why shouldn't I go and support and learn and understand the plight of the Asian community within my corporation and help them be more successful, right? And I think that's the point, is that there's a lot of different components of welcoming and just creating a culture of understanding. One of the other things that they talked about for the mental health awareness, which was really great, was having brochures. You know, having brochures in the community of things that say, seeing that makes you feel like, wow, this is not an off-topic conversation, you understand me and you feel comfortable with me. So even if you have different groups that your company is small or a startup and you don't have, but it happens in your area, topics on diversity or things like that, put an event, bring in a speaker, have somebody talk to your company about it. Have that conversation be had so people feel that you're listening and understood and welcome it. And as far as confrontation goes, that's about your leadership communicating it down. I think the one quote about the 23andMe leader, CEO, was that it's not just I'm going to put this in place and we're just going to follow it because we're checking a box. It's I'm going to live it and I'm going to empower my leadership team to know how important and critical it is to not just have it in lip service, but to have it in meaningful way, be a culture that supports everybody. And if you have a culture that has conflict, then you have to get to the bottom of that. Because the last thing you want to do is have gossip or mediation or people leaving your company or your team. You gotta get to the root of that, and you have to create a culture of openness and collaboration. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it.